You are standing in the kitchen. Your chest tight. Your voice trembling as you try to explain why their comment hurt you. You lay out the facts. You soften your tone. You offer them the exact blueprint of your pain, hoping they will finally see you. But they just stare back, their expression blank, or worse, dismissive, leaving you feeling completely exhausted and empty. You think if you just find the right words, the betrayal will make sense. But here is the reality. If you are still explaining yourself to the people who hurt you, you haven't healed yet. And what nobody tells you is that your urge to explain isn't a sign of weakness. It is a documented trauma response. If this channel has helped you understand yourself even a little better, please hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find this content who need it. Now, let's unravel why your nervous system keeps trying to negotiate with those who have already shown you exactly who they are. We are culturally taught that communication is the ultimate cure for all relational wounds. We carry the false belief that if we just articulate our boundaries clearly enough, the other person will naturally respect them and have a sudden epiphany. But when you are dealing with a narcissist or an energy vampire, communication is not a bridge, it is a trap. Healing does not begin when they finally understand you. Healing begins the exact moment you realize their misunderstanding is permanent, and you choose peace over endless performance. Here's what most people misunderstand about over-explaining. You believe you are seeking clarity, but your brain is actually trying to resolve severe cognitive dissonance. Imagine your mind as a grand, echoing courtroom where you are both the prosecutor and the defense attorney, frantically presenting evidence to a judge who has already packed up and left the building. Neuroscience shows that when we experience profound betrayal, our prefrontal cortex scrambles to make sense of the violent contradiction between who we thought they were and how they actually treated us. You are not crazy for needing it to make sense. That is not a flaw. That is information. Your brain is desperately trying to restore order to a shattered reality. But here's the twist. No amount of logical explanation can fix an emotional deficit in someone who fundamentally lacks healthy mirror neurons. This is where the real danger begins. When you repeatedly explain yourself to someone who gaslights or manipulates you, you are not just having a difficult conversation. You are actively dysregulating your entire nervous system. Think of your nervous system like a tightly wound metal spring. Every time you pour your deepest truth into a void and receive cold dismissal in return, that spring compresses further and further. You absorb their indifference, feeling everything so intensely that you become drained and eventually collapsed under the crushing weight of this one-sided emotional labor. Your body registers this repeated rejection not just as emotional pain, but as a physical threat, flooding your system with cortisol and leaving you feeling utterly burned and destroyed from the inside out. Clinical research documents that this chronic invalidation keeps your body locked in a state of hyperarousal. You are endlessly performing for an audience that is actively rooting for your failure. Here's where it gets really interesting. Sensitive people and empaths are uniquely vulnerable to this toxic cycle because your greatest strength is your profound capacity for deep understanding. You operate under the assumption that if you can just articulate your pain clearly enough, their latent empathy will finally activate. But here's a fun fact that genuinely blew my mind. Studies on narcissistic dynamics show that over-explaining actually fuels the manipulator's sense of absolute control. Every paragraph you write, every tearful voice note you send in the middle of the night is harvested as raw data. They use your raw vulnerability to meticulously map your triggers, ensuring you remain bound to the cycle of abuse. You are unknowingly handing them the very weapons they use to keep you paralyzed. Now, here's the part that makes this genuinely dangerous to certain people: your silence. When you stop explaining yourself, you abruptly withdraw the emotional supply they depend on to regulate their own fragile egos. You step out of the exhausting courtroom and simply walk away. This profound transition from frantic explaining to quiet, steady observation is exactly where your immunity is forged. You build an architecture of boundaries that no one can breach without your explicit permission. You are no longer seeking their validation. You are practicing radical self-preservation and fierce discernment. That is not coldness. That is sovereignty. You have finally realized that your truth does not require their stamp of approval to be valid. You are transformed, whole, and permanently done with the exhausting labor of proving your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. And here is the truth nobody tells you. The day you stop explaining yourself to the people who broke you is the exact day you finally come home to yourself. You do not owe a detailed, agonizing autopsy of your heart to the person who held the knife. Your peace is not a negotiation. It is a fierce, unapologetic declaration. When you release the desperate, paralyzing need to be understood by those who actively chose to misunderstand you, you reclaim your energy. You become untouchable. You realize that the most profound apology you will ever receive is the one you give to yourself for staying in the room for so long, begging to be seen by someone who was determined to look away. So here's what I want to leave you with today. You are entirely allowed to close the door. You are allowed to fiercely protect your energy. You have already done the hardest part, which is recognizing this destructive pattern. If you are ready to step into that sovereign silence, I want to hear from you. Which of these phases hit the hardest for you? Have you ever experienced this paralyzing need to explain yourself to someone who just wouldn't listen? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you know someone who is still exhausting themselves trying to be understood by the wrong people, please share this video with them. Consider it a quiet act of compassion, a gentle nudge that they are allowed to walk away and finally choose peace. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. And your silence is your ultimate power.